First story. My high school bully came back and asked me out. So I lashed out in his face and gave him an ultimatum. I F-18 started university this year. My school is located outside my home province, so I wasn't expecting to see too many people from high school here. However, I did see this one guy from high school, Thomas M18 here. To say that Thomas and I had a difficult past is a bit of an understatement. He tormented my friends, especially me, during our preteen years, and for the first 2 years of high school. He would always call me the most hurtful thing, and he was your typical bully. I don't know why he hated me, though I think he probably thought I was an easy target. He stopped picking on us around grade 11, and I thought that was it. Apparently, according to some of my friends, he turned over a new leaf around that time. Fast forward, and I see him during orientation week. He approached me and said hi. I returned his greeting, and we made some small talk, but I tried to keep things relatively short. During this chat, I learned that surprise were in the same program, and even in the same residence building. He seemed happy with this, as in his words, it was nice to see a familiar face. Over the next few weeks, we've been chatting pretty regularly, given that we do have pretty similar schedules. I've been trying to give short, polite answers, but whenever we talk, he just doesn't shut up. I sometimes suspect that he actively seeks me out for a chat. Earlier today, when I was at the campus gym, I saw Thomas. I tried to avoid his general area in the gym and kept my AirPods in my ears, hoping that he would not notice me. About halfway through my set, I heard him call out to me. We talked for a bit. I was annoyed at this stage, as he did interrupt my workout, and then he starts asking me if I need help with any of the equipment or anything like that, and that he could personally train me. I declined his offer, and then he bluntly asked me out. I didn't think I heard him properly, so I asked him to repeat what he said. He then said he wanted to take me out for lunch or something like that. I said something along the lines of now wouldn't be a good time, but he persisted and said that it could be fun. At this stage, I snapped. I told him that I thought he was beyond repulsive and dumb as SHT if he thought I'd go out with him. He looked very shocked at this, and before anything else could be said, I grabbed my bag and left. Later, I told my roommate about this, and she said that I was sort of an arse, but that she could understand where I was coming from. AITA, relevant comments. In all this time you've been talking, has he ever apologized? He kind of apologized back in grade 11. He's made no reference to our past aside from, it's nice to see someone familiar, for the past few weeks. OP is voted nah in AITA, but a majority of comments on AITA are NTA. Update. 6 days later. Before I go on with the update, I'd like to thank everyone who responded to my first post. I appreciate it, given that we are in the same region and share several classes and a 3-hour Monday lab. I have been catching some glimpses of Thomas from time to time throughout the week. I saw him a lot on Monday, given our lab, but we didn't speak. Throughout the rest of the week, I didn't see him too much and was starting to think things would end there. That was until Thursday night. I was hanging out in the dining area of the restaurant, catching up on some readings. It was around 9 p.m., so the area was largely empty. About 15 minutes into my readings, I saw Thomas and his roommate, who I'm assuming is his roommate, walking around. I think they were just grabbing some food or something. I continued doing my readings, and then I just saw him. I guess his roommate left by this stage, standing pretty close by. When I looked at him, he asked if he could speak with me. I said fine. The only reason I think I did bother listening to him was because I felt faintly bad for lashing out the previous weekend. He told me that he was very sorry for bothering me in the gym when I appeared busy, and he should have known that I'd still have reservations about talking with him, given how he treated me in the past. He went on for a good few minutes about how terrible he was, and how much grace I had for even speaking with him for the past few weeks. Then he started saying things like that there were no excuses for his behavior, and so on. I asked him if he thought there were no excuses, then why did he pick on me? Since I was a pretty quiet kid, I said that he probably thought I was an easy target. He denied this, and just became quiet around this stage. I asked again. And then he said that he did it because he liked me for a very long time, were his exact words. He also said he wanted me to go out with him last weekend, so that he could apologize more formally because he respected me. I will admit, I felt really annoyed at this stage, so I told him his apparent feelings were a cop-out, and that he probably thought it would make me forgive him. I told him that his telling me this made my stomach churn. He looked a little surprised at this and didn't say anything. I then told him that if he had any of his so-called respect for me, he'd keep his distance. He agreed, and said that he was sorry for bothering me again. Friday passed by pretty smoothly, and I don't remember seeing him at all, so hopefully he got the message. Relevant comment. You mentioned in your previous post that he bullied your friends. Is he saying he had a crush on them as well? When I told my friends about it, they were saying that if he went to one of their universities, he'd probably say the same thing to them. Second story. OP framed his wife as mentally unstable and made her lose custody of their newborn. All started because of a baby naming dispute. My wife and I had difficulties conceiving due to an accident I had when I was younger. After 3 years, we finally had our daughter 3 weeks ago. Baby and mom are home and healthy, but I have been on the couch due to an issue over the surname. My wife was previously in a long-term relationship with her ex, who committed self-harm due to mental health issues after he returned from service abroad. Her son from her first relationship lives with us and will be 12 in a month. Her son has her ex's surname. She wants our baby to have her ex's surname. She still goes by that name so that her son doesn't feel left out from his new sibling and future siblings, and because he has a better name than mine. I tried to compromise by saying that since I practically raised her son, he can have my surname. That way, he won't feel left out, and she can take my name too. She said no, as he has had his name all his life and shouldn't have to change it to appease me. I tried to explain that they have 2 separate fathers, so it's natural that they have different names. I suggested she use her maiden surname and hyphenate it with mine for our baby, and she can hyphenate her maiden name with her ex's for her son. That way, the siblings will have almost the same name. That was turned down too. We have to register the baby's name next Thursday. I told her that we should probably get couples therapy, and in the meantime, register her with my name. She turned that down too and said she went through the trouble of carrying her and pushing her out, and she should get to decide this on her own. I even asked her son, and he said he doesn't mind having separate names as he knows his father was his father. But I am his dad. He doesn't care if his sister has a different surname. I told my wife this, and she said I was emotionally manipulating her son. We had an argument 5 days ago and haven't spoken much. I didn't want it to continue like this, as this should be our happy moment. 2 days ago, I told her that the baby either gets my surname or we are getting a divorce. I told her that perhaps her dead husband could help raise our daughter with her, since she doesn't want to acknowledge me as the dad. She called me a manipulator and says it's not fair that she doesn't get to decide the baby's first name on her own, or the surname. Her suggestions for the first name when she was pregnant were feminine versions of her ex's name. Think Alexis, Alexia, Alexandra for Alexander, and his actual name if we had had a boy. Today, I called a solicitor, and she overheard. She is telling me that I am forcing her into a corner with this name thing, even though we went with her choice of first name after I sifted out the ones similar to her ex's. And my choice as a middle name. I just want some outside opinions on whether I am doing the right thing. Like, what am I doing with life anymore? It's so messed up. Additional information. OP. She is 43. Most of her life was under her maiden name. She has gone under his deceased ex name for about 10 years, but she didn't officially change it until she added her ex-husband's first and middle names to her son's official name when he was 7. Then she changed hers too. We were dating and exclusive, but I didn't mind thinking she was doing it for her son. It has only been her legal name for about 6 years. She also wanted to give our daughter a feminine version of his name, and the exact same name as her ex's, if we had had a boy. Relevant comments. Government evening 815. Wait, hold on. Is this a case of her never changing her married name after the death of her ex? I understand her wanting to keep the same last name as her son. And I feel like the hyphenation is a great compromise. So I would say NTA, because it's ridiculous for her not to compromise. OP. Yes, she kept her ex's name. And I was fine with that, as she explained she wanted to have the same name as her son. But it seems she was keeping it for other reasons, as she thinks it sounds better than mine. Civil Confidence 588 and 44. Wait, you said your wife still has the late partner's last name? Legally. That's a little different than her wanting to give your daughter a late partner's name, to be honest. It's her name too. However, it's extremely weird that she wanted to name your daughter after him the first name. Literally WTF. The commentator asks about the survivor's guilt and how OP's marriage to the wife has been affected by the situation. OP. In the beginning, she did bring him up a lot, including the self-harm. I was okay with her, but a few years later, I had a talk with her. She brought him up less and less. Then she changed her son's name and also her own. I didn't mind as she wanted the same name as him, and she was married to him, so I figured it was okay for her to change it, even if she did it years after he died. When we were discussing marriage, she said she didn't want to change her new name to mine, as mine is just bland. I didn't mind. Romantically, we were okay. We had a period of dead bedrooms, but fixed our issues without therapy. She likes that I am good with her son, but won't let me adopt him. This caused a rift, but to keep the peace, I backed down. While trying for a baby, we were more like roommates, but she really wanted a baby, and so did I. We were overjoyed when we found out it was a girl, as she always wanted one. Making a list of names and middle names caused some arguments, but not major ones. Update. A quick update, as my DMs were full of requests. From the advice given here, I contacted the registration office, and they told me that as long as you are married, only one parent is needed for the name registration. I wanted to appeal to her better nature, and got her, mine, and her ex-parents involved. Her sister tagged along for this mediation and discussion. It turns out my parents, and my 3 siblings via group chat, are the only ones who agreed with me on either my surname or her maiden name. Her parents and sister, and also her other siblings via group chat agreed with her, saying I should do it as she was the one that carried her. Surprisingly, her ex's parents thought it would be a nice gesture to name my daughter with their surname, and to my shock, the first name I agreed to was her suggestion, which wasn't a female variant of her ex's. The name her ex wanted to name their child if they had had a girl instead. She blushed when that piece of information came out when I called her on it. I asked her if it would be fair to name our daughter after one of my exes, to which she replied that I only had a body count of 3, and that 2 had the same name and both names were ugly. When everyone left, I tried to reason with her, but she slammed the bedroom door in my face and locked it. During the discussion with the parents, I tried asking her ex-parents if they would be okay with me naming their grandson after me after I adopted him, and they said they would never allow either adoption or name change. When I asked them if it was fair for my daughter to have their name, they said they felt their grandson was closer to his sister than I was to her as a father, and both should have the same surname. They also ridiculed my choice of both first and middle names for my daughter in addition to my surname. This is a couple that, up until that point, I had a reasonably good relationship with. I raised their grandson as my own, and was very surprised that this is how they felt about me. In the morning, she didn't come out, and I left her breakfast by the door. I was hoping she would calm down enough by the time we registered to discuss it as adults. A few of her friends called and asked me why it was so important for me in the year 2023 to give my surname to my child. I explained my side and why I had reservations. They still felt I was being unreasonable. On the Tuesday before the name appointment Thursday, she picked a fight with me and said she was going with her original name, the female version of her ex. She went as far as saying that she would rather unalive herself than give her daughter my name. So, I am a little ashamed about this, but as I pictured that she would no longer be in my future, I called the police on her, saying she threatened to commit self-harm. I am not proud of this. They came and took her despite her protesting that she was okay, and it was only said in the heat of the moment. I guess I egged on the police, telling them it could be PP, and that I felt it was not safe for her to be around our baby. I registered the name on my own without her blessing or participation. She had still not been released by then. Our daughter's first, middle, and surnames were all chosen by me. She obviously has some unresolved issues, and I hope she gets the help she needs. There is something wrong with her, as she instructed her ex-parents to collect her son, and my daughter to look after them via her sister until she could get out. When her ex-parents came by and tried to take the baby, I told them to F off. They threatened the police, and I told them to go ahead. So they left with their grandson. Her parents came by during the weekend and wanted the baby to be taken to her, telling me not to be difficult. I told them no. We had a visit from a health visitor and the midwife. When she was released, she didn't come home and went to her parents. She has been there since. Although she tried twice to take the baby from me, I changed the locks. She did drop off expressed milk for the baby, and has continued to do so via her sister. I contacted a solicitor for the divorce, and for now I am keeping the baby, as even the health visitor said that social services are going to get involved due to her mental state, and I am the better option for care for now. There is no saving my marriage, and I doubt she ever loved me with other things that have come out since then. I will always love her son and hold out hope that someday, when he is old enough to make his own decisions, he will seek me out. But as my solicitor put it, don't hold your breath for that to happen. My older brother and his wife are staying with me to help out, for now their children are all teens, and they have done this new baby thing 5 times, and all their children made it to teenhood. So I am listening to all their advice. So there it is. Relevant comments. Electrical Coach 963. How did you convince the police to take her? And where did they take her? OP. The police make that call depending on the situation. This is the first time I've seen it happen. They asked me if I thought I could support her, or if I thought she might succeed if I went to take a shower or something. I said no. They took her to a cell overnight. But the next morning she was taken to a mental health assessment. I think she was seen by a psychiatrist, but she changed her next of kin from me to her sister despite us being married. They might have suspected she was a danger to herself because they kept her that whole day and night after the psychiatrist reviewed her. I don't know what they did as I wasn't there, and when I called to check up on her, they said they couldn't give me that information. The commentator asks about the decision to call the police and have the wife sent to a mental institution to get evaluated. OP. I did that when she threatened to unalive herself. It was not my call, but one the police made. She was released, but will get follow-up help with her issues. In the UK, an individual can't do it. The authorities make the decision. Third story. Well, the OP and wife try to raise their adopted son in his native culture, only to find out that when he turns 18, they've made a horrible mistake. Well, I suppose this EFUP has happened today, and has been happening every day for the past 17 years. About 17 years ago, my wife and I adopted a baby from an Asian American family. While we knew very little detail, basically what happened with them was that we learned they were too young for children. I made very few inquiries, as they seemed embarrassed, or I didn't want to pry. I was just excited to have a son and couldn't have cared less about the parents' history, besides their current and future well-being. So as long as they were healthy and willing to gift me with their child, I really did not go too much into their histories. This was my major F-up. My wife and I chose to adopt this baby because we felt for the parents. And anyone who has been through the adoption process knows that it is much easier to get a non-white baby than it is to get a white one, which is effed up IMO. And we wanted one now and didn't want to be on a wait list. Anyway, we adopted this beautiful, loving, affectionate, and incredible baby. It's truly love at first sight for all of us. Around 8 months, we start to feel a little bit of guilt about not raising him in his own ethnic culture. And given that we live in an area with a major Chinese population, it would be very easy to introduce him to his roots. So for the next 17 years, we will do everything we can to honor his ethnicity. We send him to Chinese language courses, and by the time he's fluent in Mandarin and English, he gets adopted by a Chinese aunt and uncle. They taught him cultural things, celebrated certain holidays, and took him to dim sum every couple of weeks. We've been taking him to China every 2 years since he was 8. We weren't trying to force him to take up his culture as an other in our family, but we didn't want to rob him of it or completely whitewash him either. We try to be as PC as possible, and we thought we were doing the right thing. He's the best thing that has ever happened to me and my wife. There is not a day when I don't just look at him and smile warmly. I love him. Anyway, we are filling out his college and financial aid applications and doing that whole thing. I go to my home office and go through some files and find his old adoption records. I'm not really paying much attention to them. And then his biological parents' surnames pop out and basically punch me in the face. His parents' last names were Park and Kim. F. For those of you who do not know, those are Korean last names. My son is not Chinese. Not even a little bit. He's Korean. I suppose I just assumed it because we live in an area on the West Coast where there are a lot of Chinese immigrants and Chinese Americans have been living for generations. I don't always assume every Asian is Chinese, but I did assume this for my son. Now I have a 17-year-old Korean son who thinks he's Chinese. Now that I look at him, he looks incredibly Korean in comparison to all of the photos of Korean men that I have just Googled. Very square jaw, less hooded eyes, very broad build. None of this ever crossed my mind. I've dedicated nearly 2 decades to helping my son be close to roots that aren't even his. I realize that I've just been effing up. I feel like a complete arsehole to the NTH degree. I'm that dumb liberal white DC kid, F. I have yet to disclose this to my son or wife. I honestly don't even know if I will. TLDR. Assume my son was Chinese, and I've spent his whole life paying homage to his roots. He's Korean. Update. So last night, I broke the news to my son after consulting with my wife. We sort of just told him straight up and explained our mistake. We were completely transparent and told him that we had made an assumption, and it snowballed into something bigger than we'd ever thought it would become. There were some tears and some laughter, and like many of you pointed out, there was still lots of love. I don't think it has truly hit any of us yet. He wants to go to Bali and not China this summer, and he wants break dancing lessons and a new lens for his camera. He's glad to know Mandarin, but wants to go into law, not business, but we are sure it will be just as useful. He's confused, but as happy as he can be in this situation. My son isn't on Reddit. He's surprisingly anti-technology for a teenage boy. But within a few hours after my confession, a friend texted him basically saying, This sounds exactly like you and something your dad would do. He read the post, which he thought was sort of funny, but we agree on a no reading the comments policy for our own well-being. I think out of everything, he was only really pissed that I posted it without telling him first. Which in hindsight was awful on my part. Once again, I've proven I'm a complete a-hole. He's doing well, and he's taking the rest of the week off from school or any work. I'm just resting and processing it all. Thank you for watching the video. If you are interested in listening to these kinds of stories, we've got more in store for you. Simply subscribe to our channel, hit the like button, and share it with your friends.